We're doing a full combat breakdown of Campaign 3, Episode 2 of Critical Role's first big combat. Or is it a big combat? Is there things in this combat that could have gone better? That's the whole point of these breakdowns. I'm not trying to be too critical of Critical Role, but I could do the same thing for my own games and y'all's games and anything. We could all improve. And I don't want to be afraid of talking about things that maybe have areas of improvement, because there's some things going on with combat with Critical Role that I've always had some thoughts on. So I'm going to share them here with you guys. Things having to do with initiative, things having to do with fighting one single person at a time, and how you can really make that still epic and not have everybody, because in Critical Role they have a lot of players. So anytime one monster's thrown at them, in general, it's usually can be a clean sweep. And there's a lot of other stuff I want to break down here too. But first of all, I want to say thank you guys. Y'all really liked my episode 1 breakdown of Critical Role's episode 1. So I'm going to keep making these things because apparently you guys like them. So subscribe if you want to see more of that, like the video, all that good stuff. And let's check out some of these breakdowns. Oh, but as usual in Critical Role fashion, a word from our sponsor. Hey, this here video is sponsored by this guy's Patreon, whatever. He's got them resources for your games and stuff. Every single month it comes out with these PDFs. How do they do it? I don't even know. So do yourself a favor and join up with this Patreon. You get magic items, subclasses, monsters, tons of stuff. Who knows? And it helps this guy make more stuff and all that good jazz. Bada bing, bada boom. Here we go. And now for a disclaimer here. This is a spoiler warning for episode 2 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role. And I also want to do a disclaimer because, again, until these breakdown videos are more well known, I guess, I want to make sure to say I love this episode. I love watching these Critical Role things. I loved all the Exandria Unlimited episodes I watched. I have learned, and I try to learn when I watch other people play D&D, more, even not Critical Role. Anytime I watch and enjoy and soak in D&D, I try and think of things that I could do better. And I want to share and have this conversation with you guys. I loved watching the comments in the last video on some of y'all's thoughts and theories about all this different stuff. And I want to share that here. So let's dive into this combat. First up in the combat here is the battle map. Look at this battle map. Super close quarters. Wow, it is. I don't even know what the count is on that, but that's a very small battle map versus one person. So that's the biggest thing I want to start off with here is this is one person versus 8 people. But before we even get into that, you got to roll for initiative. And here's my first thing with rolling for initiative here is, and Matthew Mercer always has done this, and every time I've ever seen anything, how he does initiative is usually he asks roll for initiative and he gets up to get the battle map, because logistically he has these beautiful battle maps every single time to go get. So he leaves the table, so stay with me on this. He leaves the table, he's going to go get it. Everybody rolls their initiative, they have their number. He comes back, puts it down. Everybody's like, well, they get to react to it and stuff. And then sometimes he might have to roll his. You can always pre-roll your initiatives. A lot of times I would assume Matt does that as well, because sometimes I don't see him roll for it. But here comes the part where it takes over 2 minutes to do in this case, the initiative. Sometimes it takes longer. You guys know, like the hype of combat, you want to get right into it. And sometimes it just takes a little too long to get initiative going. So how Matt Mercer does it is he goes 25 to 20 and then 15 to 20. And then he keeps going down the line, and then people say it because as Dungeon Masters, we're going to write it in order, and that helps out, and we're filling in things. Something that I do at my table that I think that could be very helpful here, especially with their whole setup and Matt having to leave to go get the battle map and all that kind of stuff. Here's what my proposition would be, and maybe you can try this at your table. Maybe you like it, maybe not. Stick to what you love. Anyway, what I would say is, as soon as I say, everybody roll for initiative, my players already know this. They have already talked to us. I don't even have to say anything. What they know to do, I'm giving some responsibility to my players. They talk amongst each other and see what the order is amongst each other. So we got a 9, we got a 22, we got a 14, and we got a 3. Okay, cool. I don't care about that. They are talking amongst each other. They're rolling their dice. They're getting their own numbers. Who has the highest? They do that themselves. As I have plenty of things to do as a dungeon master. I'm getting the map. I'm getting the minis. I'm sitting it all out there. I'm putting things down. I'm getting my notes organized. I'm getting the piece of paper out for wherever that thing is that they just are fighting to have to go find it and whatever. Whatever I'm doing as a dungeon master, as soon as I'm ready, I'm like, all right, who's first? And they just say the person, because they know if I have 4 players, if I have 6 players, they just say who of them is the highest initiative, and I write it down next, write it down next, write it down next. And it is beautifully smooth, and I've loved it, and I've never done anything else. I've tried a bunch of different things, and I have locked in this way. So Matt would say, everybody roll for initiative. He leaves to go get the mat, And as he's getting the mat, the players can just, all 8 of them, talk to each other. Who's first? They know their own order. And then when Matt's like, who's up? They can just bop, 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 and say it. Either one person steps up and lists off the order, or they just rattle off towards it. I think that is going to be a way to kind of speed things up. And that's just my first thought. I've never said that in any of these videos before, but might as well throw it down now. Now for the first clip of actual combat. Marisha is up with Lauda, who just might be my favorite character. She does so well in this episode. This is a flavor roleplay description type moment here that I think is really awesome. Esteros is the one person that they're fighting, and again, we'll get into the nitty gritty of that here later. But she's going to cast something so simple as Eldritch Blast, and you're going to notice that she's going to remember, because she hexed it first. Good job. She hexed it and then she Eldritch Blasted him, right? So she's going to remember that she didn't roll her hex damage, but watch how the descriptions of it is, and watch what happens with Travis. You'll see.
Eldritch Blast for a 20.
20 hits. Go ahead and roll damage.
Oh, shit. What do I roll? What am I?
You'll find out. Challenge your chair.
9 total.
9 damage. Got it. As he's darting forward and Orm kind of stepping the way, he begins to slow a bit, kind of giving a look over, and as he does, hitting the shoulder, he's pushed back for a second, and you can see a bit of a dark energy kind of.
Okay, great description. Of course, Matt is amazing with descriptions. Eldritch Blast hitting it. It's a very simple thing to do, Eldritch Blast, right? Nothing crazy. Again, remember, Travis, the guy right there, just played a Warlock with plenty of Eldritch Blasts for years, right, in the last campaign. This description is going to make him kind of freak out a little bit. And all it is Eldritch Blast on a cursed target. That's all it is. She realized she also rolled the damage, and she's listening to the description, and is going to roll with it. Here we go.
Spiral off and dissipate off her shoulder.
And I take that as the dark energy flies off. I yank it right back through him for hex damage, 2 points.
Nice.
Did not forget how hex works, right? You get to add a d6.
Yep,
with
d6
hex.
when you damage.
Okay,
That's correct.
Did not forget how hex works, right?
This is something super simple, but I think it's really interesting that she listens to the description of what the Dungeon Master's saying. The damage scatters off to the side, and she's forgot her hex damage, rolled it, said it again, and the energy pulls back through him for the hex damage. Travis goes, what? Like, what just happened? Is this a cool ability your character can do? What's going on? No, it's just cool, flavorful descriptions that flow and all fit together. I just thought that was a really cool moment. So on to some more gritty combat stuff. Okay, the next small moment here before we get to the big overall picture is another Lauda moment, is an opportunity attack. She just described this. All she's been doing is casting spells, casting spells, casting spells. And then he leaves their threatened range, this one person that they're fighting. He leaves their threatened range and people get opportunity attacks. And she also gets an opportunity attack. So in general, I have 3 different videos on my martial breakdown, how I do martial classes differently. I don't just give reaction opportunity attacks to all casters. It doesn't really make sense to me for them to get it, especially if they're in the middle of casting spells on their turn. They're going to just get a dagger and stab immediately. No. They're not that combat prowess aware unless they have something like Warcaster and they do it with a spell. That makes a lot more sense. In fact, Marisha is even saying, I should have picked Warcaster. But let's see how this whole thing goes. It's a little awkward because I don't think it should even happen. I don't think it adds anything to the game. I don't think it is going to be not fair for Warlocks, and she's going to be like, oh man, it's not fair. I should be able to. No. Pick Warcaster if you want to dive into that. So here we go. Let's see how it goes.
You get a physical attack.
Physical attack.
This is going to be funny. Watch
I'm
this.
so excited.
Remember, you're blessed.
Great.
Add a D4.
I rolled a 6. Oh, I'm sorry.
What'd you get up?
With the 3, a 9.
20.
And my
20,
strength
yeah, that
is
hits.
Yeah.
-3, so that brings it back down to 6.
Okay.
Oh no!
So you hear a move and you strike out, but your eyes are still, like, vision is still gone, and you just kind of flail out into the middle of the air, not realizing that he's already stepped away. Orm does strike from the ground. Ugh.
Okay, so is that what her character would do? Do you think is just gonna flail and scratch around like with Lauda and her claws? I mean, maybe, but it was even hesitant for Marisha to even like want to do that in the first place. Like, no, I've played as a character before, and I'm like, no, I don't opportunity attack. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't feel right. I'm not doing that. So that's just a weird feeling moment for me. So, comment down below if you feel like casters just shouldn't get opportunity attacks unless you are like, and there's times in last campaign where Caduceus with the cleric, he had a staff and he just like opportunity attacks, beating people with staves. I don't know why, unless it's part of their character or they have a weapon that actually is opportunity attackable. It makes sense. And in general, it just felt weird and I had to point it out. Next one. Now for the overview of this whole Lord Esteros fight. This first big combat of Critical Role. Episode 2 left the cliffhanger for this big, awesome dude that's going to be a part of the thing. He's their main quest giver now. But ultimately, I didn't feel that big and epic to me. It felt like Lord Esteros had no legendary actions. He had no layer actions. He's in his lair and didn't have any layer actions. And we'll talk about legendary actions here in a second because he didn't have any, or legendary resistances, didn't have any of those either. He was basically just a fighter and had 3 attacks and an action surge. And I have a breakdown of what he did each turn, but ultimately it wasn't like I feel like 1 versus 8, you gotta have legendary actions and all that stuff. Maybe Matt wanted to do him being an actual character stat block of a PC fighter and they wanted it to be fair in that way. But I see when I'm a dungeon master and I'm setting up a combat, how can I make this feel like what it would be like to fight this awesome badass person that they're about to fight? So here's the breakdown of what actually happened. In 3 rounds. That was all it took. He gave up on the 3rd round. So really there's only 2 rounds of Esteros doing anything, right? The first round, he moves in and makes 3 attacks. That's what he does. He also has a martial type, a battle master type strength save for a shove to knock prone, and then he gets advantage on attacks. Okay, that's a little extra layer of something going on there. And then the second round, he multi-attacks, 3 attacks again, and bonus like healing, second wind, heals himself. And then action surges, and that's scary because there's 3 more attacks, right? So really, all he did was 9 attacks, shoving people down sometimes, and second wind heal himself, right? It's just, for me, and for what I want bosses to be, it didn't land for me, personally. And I think this is, in general, a thing that happens whenever, not just for Matt, but for other dungeon masters, when it's 1 versus all these people. Here's just some thoughts. I stopped after the fight happened. I was still live watching the whole thing. After it happened, I stopped to think, what would I do differently? What are some different homebrew things? I set a 5-minute clock. I started rattling off the things of what I could do to throw into this fight to see if it could be what I would put my finger on, what I feel like it was missing. So here's the first thing. Instead of 3 attacks, I would give him 2 attacks and then 2 legendary actions. Sure. In general, I don't think it should be like they either get 3 or they get none, right? You can mix and match them, and maybe he only has 2 legendary actions, and then players aren't going to be like, oh, that's one of his 3, or same with legendary resistances. You don't have to always have 3. Sometimes give him 4. Sometimes give him just 1. I don't know. Anyway, instead of having, and this is kind of, I'm making sure how the math would work out, I would do, he gets 2 attacks, and then he gets 2 legendary attacks. Like, that's 4 attacks total, but it's not like they all go and then he makes 3 attacks. It doesn't feel as much of a back and forth fight in a room if you are so separate like that. That's the whole point of legendary actions. So he gets 2 attacks in his turn, so his turn's scary. Watch out. He also has some cool stuff he can do as a bonus action. Watch out. And then he gets 2 legendary action attacks in between the other player's turns that he can strategically use. And it's 4 attacks now. That's awesome. And then you keep going, and if you action surge, you could still do the same thing, and you would get off 10 total attacks because you'd have the 2 normal, 2 legendaries. So your first round would have 4 attacks. Same thing the next round, and you'd action surge and get 2 more attacks. Oh, it's scary. That's 10 total attacks over 2 rounds, right? So it's 1 more than the other thing, but I think that feel would be very different. You get 1 more attack, yes, 9 compared to 10, but the legendary action separation helps the feel of what I'm trying to go for here. That's the first thing. Second one is, after he attacked in melee, he would be able to attack back at someone and like parry and stab him back. So like attacking him would be scary. Like for all the melee people would be like, oh, like he's so good at like deflecting. And Matt described some awesome like parry things that he was doing. But then reaction attack back to people that attack him. I think that would be a cool thing. Give him multiple reactions. Oh, this is crazy. What are you doing, DC? This is nuts. I'd give him like 2, maybe 3 reactions. And if people are attacking him, he's deflecting and using it. Maybe he can use a reaction to raise his armor class by 2 and do some sort of parry type thing. So there's lots of different things to go here. This would be so much fun. Even just these 2 little tweaks. It'd be so much fun to play as a dungeon master and tactically try and dismantle this 8v1 team to really make a statement with this guy, right? Last one here. Well, that's not the last one. Give him grouped up abilities, right? They're in, because you're in a small confined space. You saw the battle map. It's super tiny. Give him abilities that make him strong in that situation, right? That's why he's chosen to fight them in this small space. But he doesn't have any abilities that make him strong in this space. So I'm going to backtrack to my 2 attacks. Sure, he gets 2 attacks. 1 single attack and 1 sweeping attack. Ooh, and it's a 3 squares in front of him type situation. You make an attack roll and apply that attack roll to all 3 squares. Whoa, spread out, guys. Don't give it to both of the attacks. Sure, why not? Spread out, you know? But we can't. It's so close quarter. He pins you in a corner. You see what I'm saying? That would feel like, oh, we're in his lair, which brings me to my final thought of lair actions. Give this guy lair actions. I would have sconces or torches somewhere in the room that have some sort of counterspell potential, right? I wouldn't have it just be a counterspell because that feels bad. I would have them make a save of some kind. They'd make a concentration check, make a wisdom save, make a spell check. That's probably what I would do. Is there's these sconces, and if you're within 10 feet of this little section, so there's pockets in the room that you could cast spells from. And now that's interesting because where's the fight happening? Is Estros standing in that one of those spots? Maybe he knows and he's trying to stand in one of those spots. So the spellcasters have, you see what I'm saying? And like, it just be, the tactics go to just the next level. So I'd have 4 little sconces in there. And if you try and cast a spell while inside it, you got to make a spell check at a certain DC. If you beat it, the spell goes off. If you don't, the flames on the sconce light up and they seem to engulf your spell and your spell fizzles. Oh, wait a second. You know what I'm saying? That fight sounds really fun. And that's just my thoughts of what it would be. I think it still got across what Matt was wanting to get across. They were scared. He knocked out, you know, like he made his point known of this dude's a badass and he was going to town on these people and he stopped the fight. You know what I'm saying? But I think mechanically, I always try and think of fights. How can I make them absolutely unique, unlike any other fight that I've ever ran before or the players have ever seen before? And 9 attacks and a bonus action second wind doesn't just shake me and be like, oh man, that fight was great. Like, oh, I stood here and the fight spells went out, so I had to move. You see what I'm saying? All right, the fight's over now. Dust is settled. Everybody's kind of talking now. And Liam gets a little insight check against Esteros here. After they're talking, he's saying some stuff. They're having a little insight moment. Let's see.
Yes. Insight check. Natural 20.
Guys,
look how excited they are for the first whisper of, in 2 years with all this COVID stuff going on, he actually gets to get up and do the whispers. I love whispers at my table during certain moments where maybe they see something or they notice something that I don't want the rest of the groups to know, and I'll let that player reveal it in their own way. Maybe it's an inside check. I just released a video on the channel 3 days ago about secret insight checks and a whole bunch of different stuff on how to handle secret insight checks to where your players don't become human lie detectors. So check that out. But I just wanted to highlight this whisper because God, I don't know if y'all do it at your table, and you can do it online too. Send the little whispers, but that was fun. Next up, I can't stop laughing because it was maybe one of my favorite parts. This is amazing. And maybe why Lauda, I'm just going to go ahead and say it is my favorite character because of this moment, and we'll break down what actually that means for players and stuff. Lauda has a dead pet rat. That's all I really need to say to set this up.
He doesn't mind. He doesn't mind. Pate is my dead rat.
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Yes.
This is an amazing detail that we just passed right over.
Yes.
You have a dead rat?
Where are you
Yes.
looking?
This is Pate de Rolo, specifically.
Pate de Rolo?
Yes.
Can I hold
Would you
your dead
like
rat?
to meet him?
Yes.
Pate! And about this time, you see like rubber bands snap from each of Laudna's tips that go to his head and each of his 4 limbs, and they kind of look like rubbery black sinew. And she lifts him up and kind of starts puppeting him. Oh, hello, I'm Popsy DeRoller. Pleasure to meet you. Look at you.
Well, hello, can I shake its little paw?
Oh, hello, just pleasure.
She has taken, it has its own voice. It's her talking for it, and it just takes her already creepy character to another creepy level, but endearing level. But oh my gosh, I love her so much. It's so hilarious. And there's more clips I could weave in here, but I think this is awesome to have players have some. Is it a familiar? I don't even know. she has role played it or put so much flavor on this thing that I can't even tell if it's actually a familiar for her. I mean, she is a warlock, so does she have familiar? I don't even know if this is going to be something like that, or if it's just something purely unique and awesome. Because either way, it's super awesome. So players, find weird stuff and run with it. That's it. Here's another thing I think is really unique and something we can take and over to our tables with. Something super cool of what they did is Travis's character. I am convinced that Travis's character, Bertrand, is not his main character. Like, come on. There's no way that that's his main character. I love it. I love him playing an old man and all that kind of stuff. And I can't wait to see what character he switches to. But there's no way. He is playing a DMPC format in a beautiful way that I think is awesome. I would love to try, and I have the players that you could pitch this to, of at the start of the campaign, you want to bring all the players together and have like a common reason to be together. Travis is this like partial glue that his only agenda as Bertrand is to keep them together. His goal as a player playing Bertrand is to like keep them together. They have this whole conversation where Bertrand's talking about all of them coming together. He has ties to the library for Lauda and Imogen, Marisha and Laura's characters. I don't know if I should call them by their player name or their character name, which would be easier for y'all. Let me know in the comments which would be easier for me to describe them as, because I could do either. But anyway, he's like the glue in some ways that is DMPCing them towards being together and going on this quest together. Because once they've gone on the quest together for a while, it's a lot easier to stay together. It doesn't make sense at first. Like, why are we together? Like, those weird moments that you just kind of have to like hand wave and be like, okay, like we're together because we're supposed to be. Like Travis is this little NPC that is keeping them together in some way. And the players do a great job. Matt doesn't even have to say anything. This is props to the players to give themselves stakes in this world, give themselves a reason why they're together. What are they doing? What are their goals? Why are their goals intertwining together? They have a whole conversation, which I think could be important for your table towards the beginning of a campaign, is why are we together? What do we all want? How are we helping each other? And they can really truly feel like they should be together and they have reasons to be together. It all makes sense. And then at some point, I'm sure Travis's character will bow out and bring in some cool new character. I have no idea. Can't wait for that to happen. But I think it's really cool that the players completely on their own, because if they didn't do this, then the DM would have to kind of make sure to weave in some things and give them some other reasons and have to do some little juggling. But they do a great job of actually saying why they're all here together and throw themselves into the world that their DM created. This clip right here is flavor at its finest, and probably would be my top 2 moments here of the whole thing I wanted to share with you guys. Is Liam's character is sneaking into some sort of facility that they're trying to break into. There's some heist and infiltration stuff going on, right? He's in there. He's in the dark in a room trying to find some stuff. He can't see very well. It's completely dark. All the lights are off, and the other group is on the outside, and they are sending him messages. And this, I want to say this before I show you the clip, because this is, I think, the message spell. I have no idea if Fresh Cut Grass, Sam's character, is casting the message spell. We'll talk about that at the end. And then Laudna is also going to cast the same spell. But look how 2 of the same spells are cast totally differently. I think it's amazing, hilarious. Oh my God, here we go.
They're off living their best life.
Well, I will cast a message inside the building.
You can do that too?
Yeah, except mine's slightly different. You'll just get a feeling of curiosity from your good old pal Fresh Cut Grass.
What?
You basically feel like you're being watched then. Is that what that It's like suddenly you're in the dark feeling like you've been watched. That's terrible.
Curious now.
I send a message to Orem.
Better.
Okay, so real quick. That's amazing. Like, I don't know if Sam self-imposed that onto the message spell. I do that all the time whenever the very few times I get to play NPCs like that, or I reward my players for coming up with ways to play, like have their characters have restrictions on their spells where they have to do certain things, and it gives it more flavor and they have to think better how they use it. But then, you know, I'll give them something else to kind of balance out the negative that they just gave themselves, because this is a very different message spell of an emotion you feel and how amazing. Sam's cleric is an empathetic style of cleric. We'll talk about the classes here in a minute, but I think it's beautiful that even his message is empathy. So let's see now Laudna. Listen to Travis's deep voice that they do here for Laudna. Laudna is this creepy, dark, undead warlock patron, and my goodness, this is amazing.
Are you well?
Yes.
Is it fun?
It's fun.
Is it fun? Is it fun?
Less and less so.
Ask him if he needs any help or anyone in there.
Do you need assistance?
This is like the Ukatoa of this version of all the Ukatoa. I hope that every time Lana sends a message, the rest of the players at the table say the Zack version. It's hilarious and creepy and just, I mean, her eyes and her face, when you can tell she's having so much fun playing this character. So again, MVP, I guess I didn't always throw out MVP of this episode is Laudna, Marisha, with this the flavor, all this flavor, guys, the flavor of the spell casting, the flavor of these message spells. It's so cool and makes these characters so memorable to where people can latch onto them. The people at your table can latch onto them and really have these memorable characters that you'll remember for years. Of that creepy character, your messages were like voices of demons in my head, which is creepy. So love it. If you're interested in classes and stuff and all their little builds and whatever, I could do videos on that, but I think other channels do full breakdowns of different videos and like number crunchy type stuff. I like to think a little bit outside the box and share some ideas about these stuff and be able to talk to you guys. I read all the comments in the last video. It was really cool to see you guys' theories. Blew my mind, literally blew my mind on some of these theories that are out there, y'all. It's super cool. Read the comments yourselves too. There's a lot of really creative and strategic thinkers out there. We did find out that Laudna is a hollow one as far as her race goes. 100% Sam is an empath cleric. If you notice on his character sheet, he has his highest stat is Constitution because he's taking damage empathetically for others. So I think that's a really interesting thing there. I'm gonna get that book for Critical Role. I have early access to all of the Wizards of the Coast books. I'll be doing a video on that. Subscribe for that. Check it out. It's gonna be a big thing. I'm gonna make sure to dive into that, especially with all this mystery that's been going on. And Taliesin's Barbarian is broken. It seems so strong. I know there's a randomness to it, the little chart he's rolling on, whatever he has, but man, there is, he manipulated time in some way with his last little wild magic roll. He's not a wild magic barbarian. I'm definitely not that. But he has time and gravity. It's a Dunamancy barbarian, which is awesome. I'll do a whole thing on that too. That's really cool. And I wanted to throw out there that Laura's character, I'm pretty sure is an aberrant mind sorcerer, but there's some interesting stuff she has with like the people around her. And I think this is one of two things. Either it's a flavor thing, like that they are all doing with their spells. I've just talked about this whole flavor flavor-filled episode of all the different stuff they're doing flavor-wise. I think they might be doing that on top of the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, having some sort of like the voices around you. And it makes sense if you're reaching out to people's thoughts and there's people around you, you're going to get kind of clouded or muggied or whatever. So I think they have taken the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, added some extra layers of tweaks, or maybe a magic item that she has to be able to amplify this in some way. And there's the telekinetic feat as well. So I think she just dove deep into this whole telekinetic thing, and it's been really cool to see that. So anyway, I hope you guys like these little breakdowns. Check out the comments down below. There's going to be a ton of really awesome ideas down there as well. Thank you guys for blowing these up like you have. I really do appreciate that. Check out my Patreon, like the really fun ad to film. Whatever the Critical Role does for their ads, I'm going to do a version, whatever it is on my end here. So who knows what's going to be happening next week's episode. Stay creative. Think outside the box. Peace.